Hello, Internet. This is Sophia. In the time period between the two world wars, my great-grandfather, Solomon Siegel, got laughed at a lot. Why? Because he made predictions that other people saw as being downright crazy. A certain figure that was rising in politics, that everyone just knew was just a fad and would soon fade into obscurity, he seemed convinced that this figure wasn't going to disappear at all, and he had rather vivid and grisly predictions about what would be done to Jews in his country, which was Germany, as well as elsewhere under this guy's leadership. So, how did this all pan out? Well, this rising figure in German politics that my great-grandfather was so concerned about was none other than Adolf Hitler. And as for the dark and paranoid predictions that he had about what would happen to Jews under Hitler's leadership, well, surely you've heard about the Holocaust. Clearly, my great-grandfather wasn't so crazy and paranoid after all. So, how come he was able to predict the atrocities that so many other people never saw coming?
Well, it should be obvious why.
And who are you exactly?
My name's Jane, but my friends call me Bible Jane 'cause I'm always true to the good Lord's Word. And it should be obvious why your great-grandfather knew it was going to happen. God had a special plan for him and blessed him with a prophecy of what was to come.
Isn't there some simpler explanation?
And what could be simpler than that?
Well, my great-grandfather was familiar with the military German mentality. As a matter of fact, he had served in the German army during World War I, and he knew how obedient and efficient the German military was. He also knew that German acceptance of Jews was always lukewarm at best and could easily turn very sour at difficult times like the Great Depression that affected Germany even more profoundly than other places in the world. Finally, Hitler didn't really do much to hide his hatred of Jews. So really the question is, why didn't everyone see this coming?
Because the Lord had shut their eyes as a punishment, but he opened those of your great-grandfather because he found favor in him.
No. It's far more likely that other people just went into denial, while my great-grandfather didn't.
You want to talk about denial? You're treading it real tight with your denial of God's role in all this.
No, denial is not when you refuse to believe something due to lack of evidence. Denial is when you have plenty of evidence for something, but refuse to believe it anyway because it seems too horrible to accept. There were plenty of people who had all the same evidence that my great-grandfather had pointing to the looming Holocaust. However, as he put the evidence together and came to the only sensible conclusion of what was to come, other people grasped at whatever straws they could find to come to some rationale by which to assure themselves that nothing so terrible was going to happen. Denial, of course, is a form of wishful thinking, a pattern in which you insist that something must be true with no solid reason for believing it, simply because you so badly want it to be true. But this is clearly not a sensible way of thinking. The mere fact that you very badly want something to be true does not constitute evidence that it is in fact true, nor does it render otherwise weak, flimsy grounds for concluding that it is true suddenly more solid. Not too long ago, when talking with someone, I explained to him that if I were to conclude that something must be true because I desire for it to be true, I would have to conclude that on my walk home the temperature would be nice and cool, not cool enough for me to shiver, but cool enough for me to walk briskly without overheating. This discussion, of course, occurred in the midst of a heat wave, during which such a prediction was extremely unlikely and, in fact, did not occur. This comical example aside, there have been times when I completely devastated my biological clock and/or my day's routine by agreeing to make an appointment with someone at a time when realistically I knew full well that making it would be problematic for me at best. True, in some of those situations there was no alternative to the times for which I scheduled these appointments, but in many of those situations a much better time could have easily been scheduled had I not gone into flat-out denial of just how problematic that time that I did schedule the appointment for was. Granted, this isn't even so much as a pittance compared to much more severe things such as the Holocaust, but it still is an example of how wishful thinking has made my life worse. But there is another dangerous mindset that can also occur when someone is faced with a very undesirable prospect. That other danger is panic. Panic is when the realization of some adversity causes you to completely fly off the handle. You can make quite a spectacle of yourself when this happens, but that is not the biggest danger inherent to panic. The biggest danger is that you will not be able to think clearly enough to see the best possible course of action to take in or in anticipation of an adverse situation. Panic tends to happen a lot when the bottom falls out on wishful thinking. After all, failing to find any way to deal with knowledge of adversity other than denying it can't bode well at all when you get to the point that you no longer can deny it. At any rate, denial has caused many people to do some really stupid things, but so has panic. It is best to avoid both of those things. One more thing to watch out for about panic. Even if you are able to control the making a spectacle of yourself part, chances are it still is affecting your judgment. So really, the only way to deal with it is to deal with it at the causal level. More on that in a few moments. Now, my great-grandfather, his wife, and all 3 of their children, including my maternal grandmother, all survived the World War II Holocaust. This wasn't exactly common for a Jewish family from Germany at the time.
See? That's proof that the good Lord smiled on him.
What? You mean the same good Lord which, if he exists, obviously didn't have a problem condemning 6 million others, including babies, to a gruesome death?
It may seem bad to you, but God has a plan.
What plan? Never mind, save it for a later video. For now, I'm going for a far more probable explanation for the whole family's survival. There were several factors involved, and frankly, luck had to have played a big part in it. But the fact that my great-grandfather was able to avoid both denial and panic certainly did not hurt either. But how was my great-grandfather able to avoid both denial and panic? Unfortunately, I don't know the answer. I never met him. He died before I was born. But even though I don't know how he did it, I do have an idea of one way that it can be done. The answer is that Stoic philosophy can be useful for this purpose. It can help you gain the emotional detachment from externals that you need in order to see the situation clearly. You don't need to get to the point that the idea of an upcoming genocide against your people doesn't upset you. As a matter of fact, you shouldn't. Such a thing indeed should upset you, just not to the point that you go into denial in order to console yourself or fly into a panic should the adversity prove too obvious to deny. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Please remember to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already done so, and to use the bell icon next to the subscribe button to make sure that you receive notifications when I upload new videos in the future. Also, don't forget to click on the thumbs up button if you like this video, and to use the share buttons to let your friends know about this video. Anyway, until next time, see ya!